Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening. My name is David Woods-Hale, and I am Director of Marketing and Communications at AMBA and BGA, which is the Association of MBAs and the Business Graduates Association. Just in case some of you don't know who we are, I like to say that AMBA is what Michelin do to restaurants, we do to business schools. So we effectively accredit the top 2% of business school postgraduate programs, so MBAs, doctors of business and masters in business at about 280 schools across the world. We estimate we're in about 75 countries. BGA is slightly different. It's a membership and accreditation body focused on sustainability, responsible management, and impact of business schools. But where we've perhaps got some really unique insight is if a business school is accredited by us, all its students and graduates of the appropriate courses which we accredit are able to become members of AMBA or BGA. So we have about 55,000 business students and graduates who are members across the world. And that allows us to carry out some quite unique research into their thoughts and feelings and viewpoints on business education and business in general. So I was hoping to talk to you this afternoon a little bit about some of the research that we've carried out this year, and also look forward to some of the statistics and findings we hope to sort of bring to you over the next sort of 6 to 8 months. I think it follows on quite interesting from Sarah's presentation just now, because it sort of gives a little bit of insight into what business schools are thinking, how they perceive themselves, how students are thinking about their current courses, how graduates are considering, reflections on what they've learned and how that's really impacting their careers, and also how employers perceive business schools and also how they perceive the graduates that are coming out and entering the workplace. So I think it's quite timely to sort of take a look at this. And, I'm hopeful that this might be quite insightful for you, certainly in terms of, I know a lot of you work in marketing and admissions, so there might be a lot of interesting benchmarking that you can find from that. So basically, for the purposes of this presentation, we interviewed 450 business school leaders as we define them. So that would be VCs, deans, course directors, program managers, marketing, admissions, alumni relations, basically across the spectrum. We define them as decision makers, so they would hold budgets, they would make decisions in terms of strategy. Now, I've titled this slide a quick trip to the not so distant past, because unfortunately we surveyed the sample literally before lockdown. So I think we announced the results of this particular survey in February, March time. So it's basically asking them their opinions on their strategies and about what they're doing in the business schools. But it was just before we went into lockdown. However, in saying that, I think you might find some of the statistics to be quite interesting, because it sort of outlines their preparedness for the inevitable crisis and opportunity they were faced with shortly afterwards. So to make it easy, I've put the business school slides and all the research about our surveys into business school leaders in black and white. And when we've asked students, graduates and employers, I've put that in color, just to sort of differentiate. Don't read any more into that. So as I mentioned, the first part of the research is called Onward Looking Strategies in Management Education. So it's really polling business school leaders on where they sort of see their fit within the market, what their strategy is and what they're planning for the next steps. So firstly, the first question we ask them is, how likely is it the MBA will change fundamentally in the next 10 years? Bearing in mind this was in January, February time, you can see that, a good 70, 80% are saying it's very likely that the MBA would change fundamentally. And by that, we mean a complete shift in the way that it's delivered, in how it operates, in how in the course components that it teaches. I think the 7% that would have said in January, February that it was very unlikely or fairly unlikely that the MBA would change might have regretted that decision now. So if we just move to the next slide. So then in particular, we asked them about their preparedness around various technologies in schools that we perceived that would be quite prominent over the coming decade in terms of how MBAs are delivered and administered. So you can see that like most of the people that have filled in the survey, so bearing in mind this is 450 or so business school decision makers, they're saying that big data is important. So nearly all of them, 95%, perceive that to be important, and it came out as the most important factor that schools felt they needed to embrace. 3/4 of them felt they were prepared for this. But at the other end of the scale, some of the more emerging technologies, such as virtual reality or augmented reality, are perceived as being less important, and schools are, quite honest in saying they weren't prepared to really embrace that and embed that within their strategies. I think what's really coming across is that, schools are getting on board with technology. They understand that it's something that's vital in the workplace that students need to embrace and learn about. What I think is coming across is that they felt perhaps more reluctant to put it in place in their programs and in the way that they teach and learn. I've spoken to a lot of business school leaders during lockdown, and a lot of them have sort of said to me, we were at a sort of cusp or a precipice where we were effectively prepared to put these technologies in place, and lockdown and the various sort of other COVID-19 associated things have meant that they've, it's sort of given them the impetus they needed to push this across the threshold and really sort of get going with it. So I think if we were to run this survey again this year, and we are actually running the same survey again this year to sort of see how things have moved forward, I think this will have changed quite a lot. And I think a lot of the people who said they weren't prepared would have actually found that they were. So flipped learning is an interesting concept. So basically it is, for those of you that don't know, it means that, what we would normally associate as synchronous learning, or the things that students are sort of lectured about or taught about in class, it's flipped. So they would use their sort of free time or their study time to go through lecture material and really sort of understand the core components of the course, and then use their sort of formalized lecture time to debate these issues and have more collaborative work with cohorts. Again, this was carried out sort of January, February time. So you can see that, the majority of business schools have dipped their toes in the water, and they're sort of looking at this type of learning. But, during the lockdown period, we've seen anecdotally that a lot more business schools are really adopting this method, and they're finding it more productive to sort of do teaching and learning in this way. So again, I think this might have moved forward as we sort of look through the rest of 2020. And then I suppose, again, this slide sort of regards preparedness in light of lockdown and the sort of deluge of education 4.0. So we asked business schools, if they were doing well at various aspects of teaching and learning. You can see there, about halfway down the page, about 66% of them, 2/3, are saying they're using new technology to deliver teaching and learning. So, I mean, 2/3 of the people that we spoke to were already positioned to be able to sort of move to the new normal of teaching and learning in terms of business courses and education. And there was a little bit of work to be done at the time, but I'm confident that hopefully that a lot of them will have really got on board with this over the past 6 months. However, 85% are confident that their courses are reflecting the latest business trends, and more than 3/4 of them, 77%, really feel that they're able to portray the defining elements of their business school and differentiate it from others to potential students. So, I mean, that's quite enlightening in terms of marketing and how they're sort of positioning themselves within the wider market. We asked them if in 2019 they believed they had used new and innovative ways of delivering programs. Just under 2/3 said they had. The remainder either weren't sure or disagreed. And then we asked them, looking forward, if they felt that they were prepared to embrace the opportunities of the fourth industrial revolution. So really, having a fully technical capable business school with lots of exciting tech innovations going on, be it virtual reality right through to sort of strategic use of big data. 50% said they were already on the way. The remainder weren't quite sure. So then we asked business schools how they rated themselves and their programs. We asked them to compare themselves against other business schools as well. And we have a wealth of research on this back at the AMBA office, but I thought that it would be useful just to give you top line at this stage. But you can see that business schools are quite confident about their performance. So if you ask them specifically about their MBA program, 40% say excellent. They think their MBA programs are excellent. 45% think very good. So that's a whopping 85% that rate their MBA programs as very good, or excellent. When asked to rate their business school and their business programs overall, again, 50% rate themselves as very good, 34% rate themselves as excellent. So that's, again, 84% who are putting themselves in the top brackets there. You can see that there are a few people that are a little bit more sort of self-reflective and see that, you know, perhaps fairly good or neither good nor poor, but very few percent would rate themselves as poor. So I think what the sort of business school research that we carried out shows is that the business school leaders are confident that their programs are future-proof. They're constantly updated to reflect the latest trends. And 85% of leaders, as I mentioned, believe that their school does this really well. They also really rate the caliber of the students that they're recruiting. And I think this is because, you know, there is a competitive market. Schools obviously want to recruit the best. They want the strongest sort of mix of cohort that they can have. So 2/3 think the caliber of MBA graduates is actually increasing over the past 5 years. So perhaps more competitive there. And just over half, I'm going to say just under 2/3, so 57% think the caliber of master's graduates, excluding MBAs, has also increased. So I think that's really interesting. And I think it's really encouraging to see that, you know, that the new cohorts that are coming up are demonstrating themselves to be more impressive to business schools, perhaps more enthusiastic, eager to learn, stronger backgrounds. But on the flip side of that, it does lead to a much more competitive market in terms of recruitment. So then we asked business school leaders about what they think, what they think are the major factors in terms of recruiting students and how they really position themselves within the market. So most business school leaders, 89%, think that it's about the reputation of their school. So whether that be through rankings, accreditations, I suppose PR as well, how well known they are and how well thought of they are, that has the greatest demand on recruitment. In terms of recruiting and receiving admissions from students. But slightly less, 87%, said it was about the quality of their MBA programs. So reputation is coming up higher than quality, which I think is quite interesting. And then flipping that around and looking at what they're looking for in terms of MBA candidates, and this is specifically for MBAs, it's prior experience, with 96% of respondents saying that it's either fairly important, very important, or essential that the students coming into their MBA programs have got, you know, a decent or, you know, expansive amount of prior experience in leadership and management. And that's really so as they can bring that industry knowledge and their own insights into the cohort. And I think that fits quite well with the sort of growth of flipped learning, as I mentioned, that the sort of synchronous class time is taken up a lot more with debate and discussion. So business schools want to be sure that the people that they're bringing into the business schools are able to have those sort of high level discussions and really challenge their classmates. So, and then we looked a little bit at the finances. So you can see here that in terms of income, about 26% of a school's total income that we interviewed anyway comes from MBA programs, and that's across the entire business school, so including undergraduate, postgraduate, custom education, you know, alumni income. So it's still a substantial part of business school earning, and overall, more than 2/3 of all the revenue that schools would take comes from course fees at 68%. Now, I thought this is a bit of a full slide, I'm afraid, apologies, but I thought for your perspective, it might be quite interesting in terms of benchmarking. So in 2019, we asked business schools how much they invested and or paid for advertising or commercial initiatives. And I think this sort of fits very much in with the statistic I just showed you around the reputation of the school and how important that is. So in terms of benchmarking, you can see on average that it's social media where business schools are investing the most amount of money in terms of marketing their courses to potential students, at more than just under $225,000 on average a business school will be spending in social media per year. And that does reduce significantly to about £35,124 that the average business school would spend on careers fairs. Now, I think in 2020, that's quite a telling and important statistic, because I think there's been a lot of conversation in the market around, there's been a lack of careers fairs. It's been harder to get prospective students onto campus to meet with employers. And it's not something that schools have been able to invest in. So I think in terms then of the social media aspect, that's important. However, on the flip side, you can see that about 1.2 million on average is spent by a school on open days. So that's something that for many schools will have just disappeared overnight, for the same reason that careers fairs have had to sort of take a back seat with social distancing and lockdowns in place. So I'm reckoning that, and again, this is anecdotally, we'll see higher spends in areas such as social media and more online sponsored articles, content marketing in terms of recruiting students, as opposed to the physical open days that we've become accustomed to. Right, so moving on to the next stage of the research. We then decided to interview and survey students, graduates and employers during lockdown. So we wanted to really sort of get an understanding of how they were feeling with restrictions in place, how it had impacted their own learning, their own careers prospects, and from the employer's perspective, how they recruited graduates from business schools. So off the top of my head, because I can only see this slide, unfortunately, we interviewed about 800 current students, about 2,500 graduates, and about 1,000 employers to really sort of get their insight into the current market and how they're feeling. So the first group that I want to look at is graduates. So we took it right back to the base level and asked them why they had decided to complete an MBA or indeed a postgraduate business course. And 70% said their number one reason was to acquire more skills and knowledge about the business world, followed by just over 2/3, 67%, who said it was to expand their area of expertise, and half who said they wanted to get a broader understanding of how business should be managed. We then asked the same sample whether they felt that the needs and expectations that they had upon choosing to take an MBA or postgraduate business course had been met. And thankfully, 71% of graduates were either very satisfied or fairly satisfied with the impact the MBA had had on their careers to date. So then we asked them to sort of like look at it from a more, distilling it down into different factors that could have helped them in terms of professional development. So then looking again, so that the slide just on the left-hand side there just mirrors what I've just discussed from the previous slide. But if you look at the statistics on the right, so the bar chart, you've got the total sample in darker orange, and then you've got the lighter orange is people who graduated during 2020 effectively. So you can see that the top reasons, or the top, I suppose, factors of satisfaction are that MBAs are coming out, or business graduates are coming out of business school saying they've got more confidence. And I think that's really, really telling in the current market where confidence across the board is low. So about 70% are saying they've got more confidence in themselves. We're seeing that, again, across the board, the satisfaction scores are much higher in terms of areas such as self-confidence, resolving problems, negotiation, competition, dealing with people, and really sort of the soft skills element, than the harder skills, such as accelerating careers, earning more money. Now, I believe that that's because of the nature of the MBA graduate is changing. So in my job in marketing and PR, I spend a lot of time talking about, changing the perception of the stereotypical business graduate from somebody who's motivated by money and competition to somebody who wants to make a difference in the business world, and who perhaps might not want to work in a corporate environment, that might want to work in a charity and use those business skills to be strategic in that arena. And I think for that reason, factors such as earnings or promotion levels are becoming less important to graduates, and they are more focused on the difference and the impact that they can make in the world. And I think that's really coming across in the survey findings. And then we asked graduates this year versus graduates from up to 21 years ago, how successful they'd been post-graduation in terms of securing the job they wanted. Now, just to sort of caveat this, we've defined this as their dream role, the job that they absolutely want, not a job. So it doesn't mean that they're unemployed. It just means that they want to be in the role that they dream of, their target career. So again, really promising. So within either during their MBA or within 6 months of completing the qualification, almost 2/3 of MBA graduates found themselves in their dream career. And again, this connects, and I've repeated some of the statistics here, but I think it connects really well because 68% are more confident, 62% believe that they're better at solving problems, 58% think that they're prepared to operate in highly competitive environments, and 56% think they're better at dealing with people in a professional capacity. So if you think about the recruitment and employment journey for graduates, these 4 factors are what's going to sort of differentiate them from the rest of the crowd. They'll want to be professional in interviews. They'll want to stand out in competitive recruitment environments. They'll want to be better at solving problems and answering questions, and they'll need that confidence to really sort of position themselves in the market to stand out from other people. I'll not go into too much detail on this slide. I think that Unibuddy are kindly going to share it with you after my presentation in the goodie bag. But again, we've sort of this sort of reiterates what I've just been talking about. You can see the dark orange in the pie chart is where people strongly agree that they've gained skills in these particular areas. So again, it's like you can see 45% see themselves as being more mentally resilient, 48% think they can do business better. It goes down slightly. Again, reiterating my point about salary, only 25% strongly agree that they'll reach the salary that they want in the future. And I guess, to be fair, that's a mixture of 2 things. One, they might be changing sector. And secondly, that could be a sign of the times at the moment where the recruitment market is a little bit more volatile. So yeah, this compares people who graduated in 2020 with people who graduated up to 21 years ago. Now, I thought this was really interesting. So 26% of people 33% of people who graduated in 2020 believe they found their dream role within 6 months of completing an MBA. Back in the day, people who graduated more than 21 years ago, 49% of them found their dream role within 6 months of completing the MBA. And I think that's because, perhaps then the MBA was harder to get into MBA programs. There were fewer of them. There were there was much less competition for that higher echelon. Less people went to university, number of factors. But you can see towards the middle, so 3 to 5 years ago, 6 to 10 years ago, there is a dip in the number of people that had their dream role within 6 months of completing their MBA. Now that does correlate with around the time that we were having the financial crisis of sort of 2008 to 2014, 2012, 2014. So I think that, you can see here very clearly that the graduates that are taking part in our surveys are fitting in with the sort of wider trend in the market and being compared against a much more competitive talent pool. Okay, so the last part of the survey that I'm able to discuss today is about the viewpoint of employers. And again, as I mentioned, we interviewed about 1,000 employers, asking them about their perceptions of business schools, their perceptions of graduates, and perhaps more importantly, their perceptions of the current global economy and what this means for future recruitment. So good news first, 87% of employers are favorable towards business schools. Just under 1/3 strongly agreed that MBAs that join their organization are good problem solvers. Just under half also agreed. 22% of employers, so slightly less again, think that MBAs have adequate soft skills. So that's an issue that we'll come back to. It's an area that perhaps business schools might want to address and something that needs to come through a little bit stronger in the recruitment process. But the good news is, overall, employers feel very favorable towards business skills and very favorable towards graduates. And in terms of the quality of MBAs they've recruited in the past, you can see here that much more than 2/3, I think we're pushing 80%, either rate them as excellent, very good, or fairly good. Now, this graph's quite telling, and I'll come back to that in a minute, because I think given the current market, this is a really important point of differentiation. So going back to a black and white slide. So at the start of the year, we asked business schools if they felt that they were confident that MBAs were meeting the needs of the biggest tech employers. So namely the likes of Facebook, Google, Amazon, those sort of organizations who are working with quite complex algorithms and technology. Less than 2/3 were confident that they were producing students that were really able to meet the needs of this really fast moving industry. And then looking from on the other side of things, we asked employers how well they believed that MBAs were using these various forms of technology in their organizations. So you can see that, again, it's a mixed bag. So in terms of AI and big data, actually, I think that they're probably exceeding the expectations business schools have set. So they're very confident, or fairly confident, that MBAs are bringing these skills into play. Augmented reality, again, it's a very sort of new and emerging technology, and there's a little bit less confidence there. So we then asked employers what the sort of stumbling blocks to recruiting MBA students was. And you can see here that about just over half are saying that a lack of skills is the most commonly cited hurdle to recruiters. Now, we really went in on this in a lot of detail in our publication Ambition this month, where we were sort of really keen to find out what the conversations employers are having between with business schools and careers teams. So it's easy for employers to say, right, there's a lack of skills, but what skills in particular are lacking in students? Because when we ask them about tech, when we ask them about creativity, you can still see that more than half is saying that those skills are there. We're sort of feeling that, and you can read about this in Ambition, and I think there's a lot more work that I certainly want to do into this field, but there needs to be a lot more transparency of conversation between employers and business schools to really sort of find out what the needs that the employers have and what the experiences that the graduates have, and where these needs and experiences can be matched up so as all these skills gaps are filled, or that the student or applicant clearly knows what skills the employer is looking for prior to interview, so as they're able to really showcase this. Because I think that, given that students and graduates are coming out, and you can see from the previous slides, they're saying that, they're confident that they've got the skills to thrive in these organizations. They just need to be given the opportunity to showcase this. And then moving on again, we asked them about motivations. And you can see that less than half employers strongly agree that MBA graduates are motivated by money, which I think is a positive thing, because again, it's very much about the impact and the difference they can make within the organization. So then finally, within this part of the survey, we asked employers about their own confidence in the state of the global economy. Perhaps unsurprisingly, 61% of employers are saying that they're not confident in the state of the global economy. However, going against this, 80% say that MBAs have the relevant skills to make a significant contribution to the wider economy in their respective countries. And again, I think this fits in with the findings that we were getting from the graduate perspectives. So they've got the skills, they've got the confidence, they've got the experience. That could be the key differentiating factor in the recruitment and talent war, that they're able to sort of stand out and make a difference in those respective markets. In saying that, 35% of employers are saying they will be recruiting a lot fewer management leaders in 2020 than they did in 2019. Again, completely unsurprising given the state of the market. And I also just want to mention that this part isn't asking about MBAs in particular, it's asking about managers. So it sort of, to me, demonstrates that if they're saying that 80% have the relevant skills to make a significant contribution, then again, that's about a differentiating factor that those with these qualifications coming out of business schools might be able to stand out in the crowd in this very competitive market. And also, I think 16% say they'll keep the recruitment of MBA relevant roles the same. 14% actually think they'll be recruiting more management leaders. Reasons that they gave us for this was, well, it's a very complex market. We want to continue to grow. We need more people with tech savvy business knowledge to come into our workplaces and really sort of guide us through the next stages. So I think there's a lot to be taken from this in terms of optimism, certainly from the business graduate perspective. So yeah, I think a finding that we found is that about 28% of employers are saying there are too many candidates for too few jobs at the high levels in business. I don't think that's necessarily, I think that's a sign of the times as much as, something to worry about for the longer term. I think that it's always competitive in the high levels of business. And I think, again, this is talking about management level in general, not just about MBA specific roles. So I think there's still a lot of opportunity out there for graduates to really sort of differentiate themselves from the crowd and show what they can do. So yeah, just to sum up, there are so many challenges in the business school market at the moment. I think, you'll all know this, there's challenges with getting students onto site, there's challenges with technology, there's challenges with strategy and planning ahead. But I feel that at the start of the year, our research really demonstrated that the schools that we were talking to were saying to us that they were in a good position to move their way through the challenges. And going forward, as there'll be further volatility, I think that's pretty much certain for the next year. Geopolitical issues, which I haven't even touched on and dared to touch on in this presentation, are set to continue, and they could really exacerbate further challenges in recruitment marketing for students, and also in MBA recruitment figures and employment prospects for those moving out of business schools. In saying that, 9 out of 10 MBAs have gained substantially more skills to do business better, and 3/4 are saying they've been able to develop the business related skills that they wanted. So the skills, the qualities, the training, the experience is there. Business schools are doing a great job at preparing employees and recruits of the future. And I think they've been able to keep that in place during really unprecedented turbulence. And what I will say is we're just about to launch our student research looking at the class of 2020 and how they're perceiving their teaching and learning, their recruitment into the business school, their onboarding, their alumni relations. MBAs and business graduates are a very discerning audience. So a lot of them have feedback on how things could be improved. But I think our figures are showing vastly more than 80–90% of students who are currently going through business schools are appreciating the experience they're being offered. They're really embracing the online technology that's been put before them to help them with their synchronous and asynchronous learning. They obviously, are unhappy that they're not able to have the same sort of networking capacity with employers or with cohorts or wider faculty that they would like, but they very much put that down to being the state of the times as opposed to anything that could be changed. So I think we're in a very good position to sort of move forward. We have a podcast at AMBA, and I've spoken to a lot of business school leaders, course directors and students who are sort of saying to me that earlier this year, it got to sort of March time, and they saw this as crisis, right? Okay, we need to move all the courses online. We need to work out how we can come up with a strategy quickly to get ourselves through 2020, 2021. And I think that they're now saying, actually, it was a great opportunity because we've been really able to innovate and collaborate with other schools, with other organizations. And I really feel that there's a community in place across the world of business school leaders who are really keen to work together and to solve problems and find solutions to move forward. And that's been something that I've really appreciated seeing this year, certainly from a research perspective, and as I say, also anecdotally. So moving forward, AMBA's got loads of research that we're going to be releasing over the coming 6 months. So we carried out a massive, probably our biggest ever piece of research into climate change and the role of business schools and students in alleviating this. And we're due to release that early next month. I think we surveyed more than 3,000 students and graduates from across business schools, as well as just under 500 business school decision makers, again, looking at how climate change is being addressed by business schools and how students and graduates are changing their behaviours to really sort of alleviate and address the issues caused by changes in the climate. Then Again, in November, we'll release our application enrollment report, which measures all the applications and enrollments and graduations for the MBA program specifically in 2019. And then I mentioned our class of 2020 research, looking at student perspectives of their experiences taking MBA and business courses across 2020. We'll release that in December. In January, we're planning to release lifelong learning, looking at how business schools are offering lifelong learning in terms of executive education, short courses, and really maintaining that relationship between the business school and alumni to really encourage students to keep that engagement in place throughout their careers and continue to sort of update. And I think that fits in again with the research we're seeing from employers, where they're talking about skills and you know, constantly updating those skills as technology moves forward. So this is a really nice sort of snapshot of how business schools are moving forward to address these challenges. I mentioned that we carried out our research into technology at the start of this year, and we're carrying out again now and into the start of next year to sort of really measure how business schools have reacted. And I sort of said a minute ago, from crisis to opportunity, and looking at how they've used technology to innovate and to continue to deliver what they need to deliver during this new normal. So we'll be releasing that early next year. And then we also take application enrollment figures across all our schools in terms of master's programs, and we'll be releasing those figures in February 2021. So I'm just going to pop my details on the screen. I think we're going to be sharing this presentation after, so you'll be able to get in touch with me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn the UniBuddy page back on now, just so as I can see if there's any questions. Okay, so, oh, you sent me lots of questions. Okay, cool. So yeah, I've got some time, so I can start answering some of these if that's useful. Okay. So Monica says, what sort of trends are you seeing in terms of online and mini MBAs in the wake of COVID-19 and generally? Yeah, that's a great question, Monica. And that's a question that I'd love to find out the answer to as well. That is happening in our current research, which I just mentioned, that's in field at the moment. So we'll be able to give you quite detailed reports on that I'm thinking probably over the next 3 to 4 months. Anecdotally, I think it's fair to say that there's different sort of spectrums in terms of how business schools have moved their courses online. So I think there's a difference between taking a synchronous classroom-based course and putting it into a virtual environment where people can sort of watch using Zoom, to having a fully operational virtual reality-based business school. So there's a spectrum of how far business schools have sort of taken it. I'll send you a link after I finish presenting to some articles that we've run in our magazine, where we've spoken to business school deans and VCs to sort of really find out what they're doing in their business schools and how they're responding in the wake of COVID-19, which I think will be quite useful. But, you know, I think, like I said, it's been a case of crisis moving to opportunity. And we've seen a lot of innovation that's been really exciting as well. So I think you'll find some interesting examples there. Variances worldwide. So Yolanda's asking if we did look at variances worldwide. We did, and it is all included in our report. So I will send you some links after I present, so as you can take a look. Could it be the average age? Okay, so somebody's, Monica again is asking, is the average age of people completing the MBA dropping? And if so, have they had as much time in previous years to build those soft skills? That's a great question. Yes and no, I think so. We would estimate that the average age of an MBA student is currently between 30 and 35. Everybody at an AMBA accredited business school, so all the people that we would have surveyed, would have to have had 5 years work experience in a leadership role prior to taking on their MBA. So I think we have to keep that in mind when we're looking at the research. They've all worked in professional environments, that they're all able to sort of have experience of the soft skills that would have been needed within the workplace. So I'm not sure if the age is necessarily dropping much more than what it would have been 21 years ago when we first, that's as far back as we sort of asked our graduates. But, you know, it's a difficult one, isn't it, in terms of soft skills, that how far can it be taught versus how far can it be developed over time. So I think you raise a really great point there. And then David is asking, slightly unrelated, but when do you think is a good age or point in your career to do an MBA, and are there any signs to look for that you might benefit from an MBA? That's a great question. Yeah, like I said, the sort of average student who's an AMBA member would be between 30 and 35. We would ask that they've got quite a decent amount of leadership and professional experience prior to starting an MBA at an accredited school. And I think as you apply for schools, you would see that there's the schools will request that, and they'll sort of ask for relevant experience, and they'll want a different mix of experiences from across various sectors, and that's quite important. I think, you know, it's fair to say that an MBA is a significant investment in time and money, quite honestly. And I think, you know, that you would know yourself if you sort of had a sort of space in your life to complete that qualification. It's a life-changing qualification. I think probably more than any qualification that I've ever heard of. It's an immersive, life-changing experience that requires a massive investment of time. However, what we find is people come out of MBAs changed. They've got much stronger networks, much more diverse networks. They've got the industry knowledge. They've got the experience that they'd be receiving from the businesses with whom they'd be networking during the course. And you have that for your whole life. You've got that network forever. And, you know, like I said, sort of during my presentation, I think it's fair to say that you'll learn as much from the cohort as what you would from, you know, the lecturers. And I think a lot of business school people would agree with me on that one. So, yeah, I think it's about sort of taking the three strands of knowledge, experience, and network, and being able to take them forward and work out how you can use that strategically in your career almost immediately. And I think that's probably what's how people benefit most. I hope that answers your question. If not, just put another one in the box, and I'll come back to you. And then Ellen is saying, what kind of skills are employers looking for in their MBA recruits, and do you think this has changed due to COVID-19? Thank you, Ellen. Okay, so I think the skills that employers are looking for, like I said in the presentation, varies depending on their need. I think in a lot of cases, depending on the organization, you would have a job description that outlines very generic skills and experiences. What I would say, if I was an MBA graduate going into a role and I was having an interview, I would absolutely be, the first thing that I would be asking the interviewer is, what skills do you require? What holes are missing from your business? So as I could then respond and answer those. I think I think in the current market, the things that are really needed, and I don't think this is necessarily related to COVID-19, but I think that the skills that people are looking for is innovation, creativity. I think we've said a few times soft skills, and being able to empathize with people and have that EQ, to negotiate, to broker deals, to influence. Those are really key skills. In terms of tech, I think it's about being tech savvy. Definitely, that's important. But I think that where MBAs can really make a difference is bringing in that human and strategic element to the sort of wider tech environment. During COVID-19, I think there's a greater need for people to be able to be personable and be human. It's harder to do that using Zoom and technology. So it's about sort of really strong networks that you can draw upon, connect with, and utilize strategically across businesses. I think those are quite key. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so yeah, I think that's all the questions I've got in front of me. I don't know if anybody wants to pop any more in. I will go on to the Speakers Lounge after this if anybody wants to chat with me there. and there are representatives from AMBA and BGA taking part as partners. So we're online all day. I personally will be there between 3 and 4. So if you want to talk to me again there, I'll be around in that chat room. Otherwise, yeah, just you've got my details. Feel free to drop me a line. As I say, like, we have masses of research that I can sort of send you. I've sort of given some top line findings today, but we've got masses of research that we can share. We can segment that right down as well. And I'm sure the research team at AMBA will just be delighted to spend some time putting all that together to help. And we're always happy to help. So even if you've got any questions that aren't related to what I've been talking about today, but you know, that might be sort of pertinent to business school decision makers or students and graduates, chances are we might have asked them something, and we'll be able to share some findings with you. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today. I know it was a little bit death by statistic, but I hope a lot of them were useful and helpful. And I'll really look forward to continuing the conversation. So thank you very much.